Welcome to the Westport Library. Today's program will begin momentarily. Supported by Verso Studios, created locally and shared with the world.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to Storytelling. You're welcome. Welcome to Storytelling Sundays, Tales of Love. My name is ChaChanna Simpson. I'm the curator of this amazing event. And today it is a special day because it is kicking off our third year of storytelling at the Westport Library. Yes, yes, yes. When I started this event, it was just open mic, which we still do, and the goal was to build community because stories build community. Stories build understanding. When we hear other people's stories, everyone has an origin story for a reason why they do what it is they do. We may not like that, we may not understand it, we don't have to put up with it, but knowing helps us understand people better. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the story of a woman who's making dinner and she made a roast and she cut off the front and the back and put it in the pan and then cooked it. And her husband was like, "Why do you do that?" She was like, "I don't know, my mom did it. It's what we do." She asked her mom, "Why do we do it?" She's like, "I don't know, saw my mom do it. That's what we do." So she asked her mom, "Mom, why you do that?" She's like, "Oh, because when we were starting out, the pan only fit a certain amount. So we cut out the front and the back so that it would fit in there. So there was no reason that, for cooking aesthetics or anything. It was just because that's just how it started. But you never know until you start asking questions and listening. And that is what storytelling is to me. It's about listening, it's about building empathy, and about connecting. So today, you are going to hear some amazing, beautiful stories on the theme of love. I've heard all of them, and they're amazing. You are in for a treat. This event, I totally forgot, is in partnership with the Westport Library. Of course, they give it this wonderful space. Please, let's clap for them. I appreciate them so much. And also with Northeast Storytelling, the premier storytelling organization in the Northeast area, helping support, promote, and educate storytellers. And so, is there anything, I should really check my notes. I should be actually wearing glasses, but we're not gonna do that. It ruins the aesthetic, so. So moving on. We're just gonna start. I thank you all for coming out. Thank you so much. So we are just gonna begin. Our first storyteller is Amy Jo Myers. Amy is a Connecticut native and the youngest child of parents who migrated from the South to New York City and then to the hills of Northwest Connecticut, making Amy at least 3 times removed from her origin story. She sees storytelling as a link to understanding herself, past, current, and future. Amy lives in New Haven with her wife and their 4-legged loved ones. I asked each storyteller, who or what taught you the most about love? And she said, "For me, this is an impossibly enormous question that I cannot seem to answer. I have teachers, present and past, human and non-human, triumphs and failures. All I can say is that I'm still learning." Please welcome Amy Jo Myers. Make sure to let me know if it's good for you.
I think this is good, yeah. I've never been so certain about anything, anyone in my entire life. But I am certain about this. It's 2005, and I'm absolutely sure that Janice, who I've been dating for just a short time, is the one. She is the one. And we've been doing this kind of long distance thing, which means basically she's been coming from New York to see me in New Haven on the weekends. And this beautiful spring day, it's my turn to go to her apartment for the first time in the Bronx. So I pull up to the building and I'm so excited. There's a parking space right in front of the building, which I feel like is a sign. It's gonna be a great weekend. I get my bags, I go and ring the doorbell, and Janice answers the door looking beautiful and radiant as usual. And is she saying something? I can't hear her. I can't even hear what I'm thinking. I'm paralyzed with fear, afraid to take one step further inside because there is a 45-pound wolf, dingo, furiously protesting my entrance. He's brown on top and white hair underneath. He has this unruly mane across his back and shoulders that kind of reminds me of Disney's version of the Beast in Beauty and the Beast. He's jumping up at me, and I can see that one of his hind legs is short and skimpy, and so he's standing on one leg and jabbing at me with the two front ones and yelling at me, out, 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 get out, out, out. Now, Janice has told me all about her dog. She's told me all about her beloved pup, who she rescued from a beach in Puerto Rico. That time when she went to Puerto Rico all by herself to mourn the loss of her mother. She told me all about how she and this dog, he was in a pack of strays. He was on the beach and their eyes locked with the sunset behind them, Caribbean waves crashing. She told me all about how fate met with Providence and how when she went back to her home in New York City, someone found a way to fly this dog practically for free and deliver it to her arms in New York City. And as this animal, who seems to be made up of spare doggy parts, is jabbing at me, I think to myself, is this him? Is this the dog that when she talks about him, her eyes mist over with motherly pride? So Janice bends down to pet him and says, shh, shh, cállate, Poochie, cállate. Calm down, Poochie, to her Puerto Rican dog who understands Spanish. And when she says his name, I say to myself, yes, this is him. This is her beloved pup, deceptively named Poochie. My first weekend with Poochie is rough. Lots of sniffing and barking, and every time we leave the apartment and come back in, he does the same guarding of the front door, barking and sniffing, like he's a creature guarding the gates of Hades. By the end of the weekend, I am completely barked out, and I say to Janice, how about next weekend you come to New Haven and leave Poochie here and someone can babysit him? I'm driving back to New Haven with bubbles bursting in my head, thinking about my future life with the woman of my dreams and her dog. The next time I go to the Bronx to visit Janice, she and Poochie are on the sidewalk waiting for me when I pull up. She says, I think maybe this will minimize the barking. And she's right, it does, because we all go in together. But it ramps up the sniffing and the humping. And I say to Janice, can he smell that I have my period? Oh, no, he's just trying to get used to you, Janice says. Ven acá, Poochie. Come here, Poochie. And I push Poochie away from my crotch. For a moment, he leaves my womanly scent and goes to Janice to receive his rewards of smooches and treats. Janice and I leave the apartment for the day. I put down my bags and we go to Gallivant in the city. And when we return a few hours later, I hear Janice say, oh no, ¿qué pasó? What happened? And I see Poochie trot across the apartment and put himself on a chair and put on a very innocent face. As Janice and I investigate a crime scene, my clothing taken out of my overnight bags and strewn around the apartment in lifeless clumps, a sock here, a pair of underwear there, and the feminine hygiene product that I had meticulously wrapped in newspaper, discarded in the bathroom, is now unwrapped and left on the bedroom floor like a warning, lying there like a lifeless, dead New York City rat. Eso no se hace, Poochie. Janice says to him, "You don't do that." And Poochie looks at her with his big brown marble eyes, one ear sticking up, one ear flopping down. "Eso no se hace." And I think Janice's Puerto Rican dog is starting to learn some English, because as she says to him in Spanish, "You don't do that," he looks at Janice and looks at me, and I don't think that Janice hears him respond, but I hear it. He looks at me and says, "Oh yes, I do that." That summer with Poochie and Janice, Poochie and I surf turbulent waves of front door, barkful greetings. We rival over Janice's affection. We fight over who will sit next to Janice on the couch. Usually, Poochie wins. There are 3 of us asleep and spooning in Janice's bed. And Janice, ever the optimistic and hopeful one in our relationship, says, "Maybe you can take an active role in walking Poochie, and that will kind of strengthen the bond between the 2 of you." And so I start off with the 3 of us walking together, and I'm just holding on to his leash. And one Saturday, I graduate to walking him all by myself. And so there's me and Janice taking a walk in the South Bronx while Janice stays back at her apartment. Poochie and I walk down Monida Street, and we're walking over broken sidewalks, trash on the curb, and Poochie snatches up and gobbles down a chicken bone that's there for some reason. And up ahead of us, I see there's a man standing on the curb, and I think maybe he's seen better days, maybe decades ago. And so I start to cross the street, but Poochie pulls me and keeps me forward toward this man. And as we get a little closer, I can see that his face is very dark and very wrinkled, like a big prune. And as we get a little closer, I can hear that he's saying something with a very hoarse whisper, almost like a whisper. And Poochie's pulling me toward him, and I hear this man say, "Hey, killer, killer, killer," to no one. And so again, I try to take Poochie across the street to avoid this man. And as we get closer, he puts out his hand, and is calloused and swollen, and his clothing is soiled. And when he puts his hand out, Poochie stops right in front of him. And the man repeats, "Hey, killer, killer." And Poochie looks up at him. And I don't wait to see what's gonna happen next. I turn around and head back to Janice's apartment, suddenly feeling very protective of Poochie. And when we get back to the apartment, I tell Janice about, "Hey, killer, killer." And she says, "Oh, that man, that's Poochie's friend. He's always down there. He loves Poochie. In the mornings when we take our first walk of the day, there's usually a line of people at the clinic down the street, and they're all standing out there waiting for methadone. And he's one of the guys who's there. And every morning we walk down the street, and there's a line of people, and they all stop and say hello to Poochie. They pet him. They love him. He's like their therapy dog. I don't know why he calls Poochie killer. He's like their therapy dog, she says. They all love him. I swallow hard on the bitter bile of my shameful judgment of the man and of Poochie. And that night, as the 3 of us sit on Janice's couch to watch The Sopranos, Poochie inches over ever so slightly to make space for me. And for the rest of that weekend, my heart starts playing tricks on my eyes, so that when I look at Poochie, I no longer see a weird-looking little dog with a limpy leg who's made up of spare doggy parts. I noticed the dog who had a broken leg when he was a puppy and lived on the beach for years and never got any medical care. And somehow he learned how to get around just fine anyway. And instead of seeing a Cujo who is trying to scare me and intimidate me with his barking and his humping, I see a little dog who is trying desperately to ensure that nothing comes between him and Janice, his savior. And so at the end of that weekend, when it's time for me to leave, I walk out to my car. I have my overnight bags, all clothing intact. And Janice and I hug and kiss goodbye, and I bend to say goodbye to Poochie and pet him on his head and get in my car and start to drive away. And I see in my rearview mirror, as I start to drive, Poochie kind of pulls on Janice's leash a little bit. And they start walking faster, and I'm driving, and then Poochie is at kind of like a slow trot, and Janice is going with him. Then he starts to jog. And before I know it, Janice and Poochie are at a full-on three-legged sprint running down the street. Poochie is jumping over broken sidewalks. He's bypassing prized chicken bones on the street to run after my car, chasing after me. And I see them in my mirror until Janice can't run anymore. And so she stops. And I watch them just get smaller and smaller as Poochie watches me drive away until I have to turn the corner to get on 95 North to come back to New Haven. And I actually tear up a little bit thinking about the turned corner between me and Poochie. And I say, nos vemos, Poochie. We'll see each other soon. And I think I'm actually looking forward to the next time when the three of us are together again.
That was amazing. Thank you. Sometimes love is an instant. Sometimes it needs to sniff you out first. You see what I did there? Our next storyteller is Jezrie Marcano-Courtney. Her stories, rooted in memory, share aha moments on the journey of finding her authentic self. These adventures, though sometimes hard, always reflect on acceptance and belonging as an Afro-Latin human being who learns through failing, but never failing to learn. When I asked Jezrie, who or what taught you the most about love? She said, time has taught me the most about love because it arguably doesn't place conditions or circumstances on people to figure out what they want and need in life. It's in time that understanding is gained and love can be expressed for better or for worse. Please welcome Jezrie Marcano-Courtney. Make sure this is gonna work for you.
A little bit. Yeah, that's good. And now for the vocal stylings of short people. It's early dismissal day in my senior year of high school for Christmas break. I'm in the gym and I'm taking attendance for PE. When you're a senior, you get to be the teacher's aide, and also when you're a goody two-shoes, so there we go. I look up from my clipboard and see that Paz is walking into the gym, and I roll my eyes in annoyance. Oh, brother, here we go. Paz and I are in the middle of our second official fight as a couple. And it started as we were celebrating the end of our first official fight as a couple, when we decided to sneak a kiss in the stacks of the school library. Well, the French teacher caught us, breaking our momentary peace, and fearing the worst, I sit my parents down to tell them what's happened. My dad crosses his arms. He sits back in the couch and he says, "You mean to tell me that this boy has been kissing my child in the school library and has never called this house to ask me for my permission?" The look he gives me shoots daggers in my direction. My mom is equally disappointed, but a little bit more diplomatic. And she says, "Well, why don't we invite the boy for dinner? And then once we finish eating, we can talk and set boundaries." And my dad interrupts and he says, "Yeah, like no adult couple activities unless you guys intend to be married to each other and after you've graduated with your 4-year degrees." And then he sighs and he says, "Jez, what do you expect from this relationship?" And reminding you that I'm a senior in high school, I don't know how to answer that question, so I decide to ask Paz the next day back in the library, not kissing in the stacks. And I share with him what's happened in the conversation that my parents and I have had. And he bites his lip and he looks a little like a deer in headlights, and he's like, I haven't really thought of that." And so then I tell him, "Well, you've been summoned for a visit with my parents at our house." And so Paz and I are seated at a study table. He sat across from me, and we're both by a great big window. And Paz looks over to the window. And then he says, "I don't think I'm gonna be able to visit with your parents," which has popped this bubble in my mind of having my boyfriend visit my house. I'm so excited despite the fact that the circumstances aren't great. He's the tallest boy I've ever liked at over 6'1". He's a senior just like me. He's got a physique of a Greek god. He's super smart like I am, and I love the way that he makes me laugh. But that thought dissipates. I say to him, "No, you can come and my dad and I will come and pick you up if you want." And he's got his eyes trained on the window and he says, don't come and pick me up." And so now I'm starting to think, okay, well, this is a little bit strange. And one thing that you should know is that Paz and I are the couple that you would never think would get together in high school because he's a popular jock and I'm a nerd. And we both come from different ethnic cultures, but cultures that believe in religion and good food and family. Honestly speaking, this visit should go well. But then I remember in the 10th grade when we were sitting with our friends and talking during geometry class, and Paz said that his parents will let him date outside of his race, but his parents want him to marry somebody that looks like him and them. And then just this past summer, when we were at SAT school together, overhearing some of my friends talk about how now Paz is not allowed to date outside of his race. I really don't want to jump to any conclusions, but I have to ask. Is it bad that we're together? You know what, Jez, let's just drop it. No, really, Paz, is it bad that we're together? Well, kind of. Oh. So I'm having a lot of thoughts, and I'm doing my best to not believe any of these thoughts. especially that it might be the way that I look that is going to keep us from being together. And my eyes are filling up with tears. And at this moment, Paz and I are now looking at each other face to face. I feel heavily glued into my seat. The table between us disappears, but we are miles apart. Is it bad that we're together because of how I look? And Paz swallows hard. And he says, yes. And then he says, but it's not because that I think that, it's because my parents think that. And at that moment, I remember all the times my parents have said to me, they don't care who I bring home, as long as they have their permission to kiss me in the stacks of the school library, but also that they love and respect me. And now I know that my parents are liars because of Paz and his parents. And truth be told, no matter how much Paz could love and respect me enough to assure my parents, with the shoe on the other foot, all his parents are ever gonna care about is how I look. And now my heart is breaking because I know that we cannot be together. So back in the library, Paz walks up to me and he reaches into the pocket of his gray Abercrombie & Fitch hooded pullover. And he pulls out a single candy cane and he hands it over to me wearing a megawatt smile. The candy cane is that green and red color variety that I absolutely loathe because they taste like cough medicine. But I also see that there's greasy, like cookie residue on the wrapping, and if I look closer into the candy cane, there is a small fissure in between the hook and the shaft of the candy cane. And so I want to ask him what it's for, but I already know. And as I look at this candy cane, I see us in it. Paz and I decide that we are going to continue our relationship, but we're only going to keep it at school and we're going to keep it a secret. Well, somebody must have saw us because later on that spring, we found out that we were nominated for prom king and queen. But his parents never found out. Thank you.
Let's keep it going for Jezrie. Yeah. Okay. So young love can be so strong, but sometimes the voices around it can be louder. Thank you. Our next storyteller is Wendy Marans. Our next storyteller is Wendy Marans. I want to make sure I got that right for the record. She is a lifelong story lover and listener, and a storyteller who has told at venues in Connecticut and Maine. By day, she works with children as a pediatric speech pathologist, helping children find their voices and tell their stories. Wendy believes that stories can be a gateway to friendship, understanding, and healing. When I asked Wendy who or what taught you the most about love, she said, I found this a really hard question to answer. I've learned so much from so many different people, different kinds of relationships, successes, and mistakes. It never really stops. Just keep an open heart. Please welcome Wendy.
Is that good? I think that's great. Thank you.
I still shudder when I think about the pickup. She always smelled of warm lavender, no matter what time of year, sprinkled onto her linen handkerchief from a small, round, cut glass bottle that looked as though it should have held magic potions. When I leaned in to kiss her cheek, it was white and powdery, like lightly floured dough. And I don't remember her voice or conversations we must have had, but she always wore a black hat, a black skirt, a cropped tailored jacket, and black lace-up shoes. I loved her as if she was magic, about to disappear, a little dangerous. Every weekend, we'd pick her up on a Sunday for a Sunday run, not a precursor to a marathon for seniors, but a peculiarly English habit of driving around in your car in the countryside, sometimes with a pub lunch thrown in, hopefully no hiking involved. Each time, and this may make me sound shallow, but it's one of the reasons I loved her, she would hand me a white paper bag full of quality street chocolates. These were chocolates, milk chocolates, that were wrapped in brightly colored foils, and I knew all of the fillings by heart. On the weekends, when my older sister joined us, we would fight viciously over the one royal purple prize, filled with liquid toffee and a hazelnut. My mother, quick to seize the moment, would threaten to eat it for us. And those chocolates taught me the art of scrupulous turn-taking, and also confirmed my thinking that only kids had definite advantages. The problem with this idyllic picture was, as I said, the pickup. Nana Morley lived at the end of a long, sweeping driveway with manicured lawns on either side and massive cedar trees whose branches touched the grass. The driveway opened up to a large, austere, red brick, Dickensian-looking building. And as a child, I completely failed to notice that the grounds were surrounded by high black metal fencing, and that we passed through a locked gate worthy of Pentonville Prison. My father would pull up outside the building, and my mum would say, "Go and get Nana." I never questioned the directive. I stepped out of the car filled with dread. I was probably 9 or 10. I didn't know about horror movies yet, but I had read Jane Eyre, and I had a vivid imagination. I approached the forbidding front door and pushed it open, probably not with a creak, and stepped into the vast, dimly lit hallway where someone approached me and said, "Who are you here to see?" They went off to find my grandmother, leaving me standing there listening to wailing, keening noises from upstairs while these waif-like women would walk past, sometimes approaching me with outstretched arms, stopped by the woman who delivered Nana to my care. We walked back to the car, and she handed me my white paper bag. Hush money, kiss it better chocolates. As I reached the preteen age, where family secrets seemed to be leaked, I came to learn more about my grandmother and the psychiatric institution that she called home, and which I thought would have been very lonely, but which she seemed to be fine living as she did in her intrigue-filled private reality. I also came to understand a little better my mother, who sent me in to fetch her mother, and then seemed to disappear vapor-like. I cannot pull up an image in my mind of where my mother was in the car. My grandmother seemed to fill the space. I discovered that my grandmother thought my sister was the product of a liaison with a high-ranking member of the royal family. Maybe Prince Philip, perhaps Prince Charles, only I think that would have been a generation off, and my mother wasn't a cradle snatcher. But it did help me make more sense of my mother's fierce adoration of all things royal. And the strange thing was she actually physically resembled the Queen. They both were petite and small-statured, and they had the exact same never-changing hairstyle. I was convinced they shared a stylist. But this preoccupation of my grandmother's led to scary scenarios, which I only learned about later. She was very protective of my sister. On one occasion, this led to her hurling boiling water at my grandfather because he dared to reprimand Penny for some minor infraction. Royal children can do no wrong. Well, there is Andrew. She tried on one occasion to steal my sister, locking my frantic mother in the pantry, probably in an attempt to return her to Buckingham Palace, where she rightly belonged. She also was preoccupied with, and rather scared, of sexually transmitted diseases. Not something you talked about in the Royal Empire at the time, openly at least. She accused several members of the family of having them. This helped me understand my mother's neurotic response to all things sexual, which she tried to pass down as family law. No wonder for a period of time, I thought that if I even looked at a boy funny, I could get pregnant, or worse. I think this delusion was probably because my grandmother's nephew was a preeminent specialist in venereal disease at the time, who knew the very word struck terror in my heart. So my mother, and as a result, we, her daughters, lived in the shadow of my grandmother's mental illness, in a small village where there were no secrets, where the whiff of scandal would start a rumor that spread like wildfire, and where mental illness was still shrouded in silence and dread, the stuff of witches. People would cross the street to avoid walking next to my mother, as if somehow my grandmother's behaviors were contagious. Friends at her school started a petition to stop her from being allowed to move into their class. And she was so scared that my grandmother would find out and do goodness knows what. She took the long route home, allowing 4 miles to hide her distress. So perhaps because of this, certainly in spite of it, my mother managed to escape. She left home at 16 and became a nurse, which meant she could live in the nurse's home in a nearby county town. She loved ballroom dancing, and that's where she met her husband, my father. And they had children, my sister, Her Majesty, and me. But there were, of course, echoes. She lived a life with very few close friends, lots of keep-your-distance acquaintances. And she had a myriad of small phobias, many of which involve food, which is perhaps why we moved from Quality Street chocolates to Cadbury's milk tray. Surely my mother knew that her mother was schizophrenic. But on those occasions as an adult, when I would try to talk to her about it, she became vapor-like, just as she had in the car on those Sunday runs. For me, while it's the obvious medical explanation, I prefer to think of my grandmother as magical, armed as she was with a small, round, cut glass bottle and a white paper bag full of chocolates.
Thank you, Wendy, for sharing that story. Lavender, secrets, and chocolates. Our next storyteller Michelle Trieste is a storyteller, speaker, and writer based in Fairfield County, Connecticut. Her work blends lived experience, sharp humor, and hard-won hope, stories that invite people to laugh, exhale, and recognize themselves. She didn't learn to ride a motorcycle until she was 42, which aligns with her belief that life is a marathon of learning, reinvention, and adventure. She's the author of Riding the Rivers and creator of the storytelling project 0 to 60. When I asked Michelle, who or what taught you the most about love? She said, my children did, because love became a verb the night I chose to leave. 30 years ago, I brought my children back from Romania, and it was one of the most dangerous decisions of my life. I didn't leave with a plan that felt solid. I left with a prayer. God, take my children in your hands because mine are shaking. I knew what the risk could be. I also knew I couldn't stay because even if the harm wasn't aimed at them then, control always has a way of reaching for the next generation. That night taught me what love is and what it isn't. Love isn't charm, it isn't control, it isn't a promise someone makes when it's easy. Love is protection. Love is sacrifice with purpose. Love is doing the next hard thing so someone else can have a future. And she's carried that one line with her ever since, this one line. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Because sometimes you mourn what you're leaving even as you're walking away, trusting that comfort can meet you on the other side. Please welcome Michelle.
I might break it, but yeah. I can be rough. Valentine's Day, some people get roses. I got a gas station. Not a nice one, but the kind that has faded covers on the pump, cracks, rust, and a bright overhang with humming from above and flickering. So I pull in. It's late at night. I turn off my engine. I'm alone at the pumps. There's no one around. It's freezing. I could see my breath. I pull out my card. And then I got off my bike. I could hear the crunch of the sand and salt and grit underneath my boots. And I go up to the pump, swipe, decline. I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on here. And I look at the screen and I'm waiting, I'm staring at it, waiting for it to change its mind. It doesn't. So I look down at my gloves, and these are my red bedazzled gloves. And in this shine, they almost look like red dragons. Now, these gloves I got and bought and bedazzled when I had done the Iron Butt Challenge. That's when you ride 1,000 miles within 24 hours. It was one woman and 11 guys. We rode from Connecticut to South Carolina. And if I was going down, I was going down with sparks and sparkles. So I was like, okay, let me try this card again, because I do believe in romance and second chances. Swipe. Decline. Now, I'm looking at this pump, and I'm starting to get angry because it's being judgmental. All I'm asking here is for a little bit of gas and dignity. Can you give me that here? It's like we're in couples therapy. And it just stays blank. So I said, okay, let's try another way, dear. So I take out my card again, and I shimmer it. I try to shine it everywhere, breathe on it, and I reinsert it. I wait, nothing. So now I'm starting to feel the judgment that rises up in you when you're really tired and things are just not going your way. So I look at my gloves again, and it's like my gloves are saying, calm down, Michelle, it's okay. We're not having this tonight. I said, okay. So I just say, all right, if you're gonna be this way, then it's not you, it's me? Oh no, it's not me, it's you. So if you're gonna be cold about it, fine. He is cold. This pump is cold like an X. So I'm going to a different pump. I go to the next pump. I walk up to it, swipe a little slower because maybe it wants a little tenderness. I can do that. Swipe, decline. And I say, I just come in close and I whisper and I say, is this because it's Valentine's Day? It flashes at me, see cashier. So I go inside this gas station, and when I open the door, the bell rings like it's happy at my failure. And I look around, and the lights in there, the fluorescent lights, are so bright, they not only show your face, but they share your history. So I look over, and I see this young man, the cashier, behind the counter. And he looks so young as he's guarding the Marlboros and the Newports, like he's never had an argument with any kind of machine. So I walk up to him, I put down my card, and I say, look, this card is not working at the pump. He grabs the card, swipe, approved. I guess we know where the card's loyalty is. So he looks at me, looks at my helmet, my leather vest, and my bedazzled gloves, and he says, you've been riding long? And I was not in the mood to say anything normal. So I looked at him and I said, it's Valentine's Day. And then I added, and my date is gasoline. He just looks at me and he just shrugs. Okay, woman. So he slides the receipt like it's a permission slip. And I pick it up and he says, pay inside, then pump. I was like, thank you. So I go back outside. I walk up to the pump again, like I've got it, I've got my permission slip. And I open my fuel tank, and I grab the pump, and I put it in there gently, because I don't want to upset the pump. He's very sensitive. And I fill it up, and I'm watching 2, 3, 4. And the pump shakes, shivers, like he's upset he's having to do his job. I keep going, I'm watching the numbers, like it might revoke my privilege if I'm not gentle with it. So I finish filling it up, it jumps, pops, I take it out. And as I'm hanging up the nozzle on the pump, I could see my hands are just freezing. They look like little lobsters, judgmental. And I said, okay, my pump, my gas tank is full, but I just need to warm up. So I'm gonna go back inside. So I go back inside the gas station, and the young man just looks at me. He doesn't say, what's wrong? What can I do for you? He just turns aside and grabs a paper cup, puts it on the counter, takes the pot of coffee and pours. And you can hear it. You can hear the hiss You can hear the fullness of the cup fill. Then he takes the top and he pops it on. And he just moves it to me. And I look at the cup, and I look at him, and I look at the cup like it's a trick. And he just shrugs his shoulders like, it's cold outside, that's all. So I put my hands around the cup, and I feel the warmth go through my gloves like it's talking with my fingers. And my gloves loosen up, and my hands and fingers uncoil. And I sip the coffee. And my body just reacts before my brain and just calms down. And I just blurt out. I just say, that was the most honest Valentine gift I've ever had. And it didn't ask me anything. It didn't ask anything of me. It didn't have a heart sticker on it. He didn't have to say, Happy Valentine's Day. I didn't get a speech, just a cup. And it got me thinking that kindness is really just something warm and simple. It doesn't require a backstory. It doesn't size you up. It doesn't grade you. It's just there when you think you don't need anyone or anything else. So I went outside, hopped on my bike, and I just took a moment. And I looked over at that pump, that cold, judgmental pump. And I just had to laugh because I only came in here for gas. And I got more. I got a reset. I got a moment where someone did not size me up. I got someone who wasn't looking for a story. It was just a cup of coffee. So I did the only thing left to do. I booted her up, I hit start, and I heard the hum of my motorcycle, the call of the wild. And I rode out from beneath those bright lights and into the darkness. Because sometimes love is not roses. Sometimes it's a working credit card. It's a stranger that doesn't ask you for your whole story, and a cup of coffee to keep you going. A cup of coffee, burnt coffee, and second chances. And sometimes it's the most ridiculous pair of red bedazzled dragon gloves that will remind you to not give up on yourself at the pump. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. What a memorable Valentine's Day, as we have it the day after. Our final storyteller for the afternoon is Denise Manning-Keys Page. She is the founder of Ubuntu Storytellers, an ensemble of story artists of Black and Brown ancestry, and co-founder of Women Tell by the Decades. She recently debuted on the Moth main stage, and I was happy to see her there live, and is currently working on her trilogy, Legacy of a Wealthy Slave. And when I asked Denise, who or what taught you the most about love, she said, unconditional love I learned from my dad and my first husband. The fullness of surrendering to romantic love. He knows. Please welcome Denise to the stage.
This seems good.
Okay, all right.
No feedback. Thanks. I love the fall. I'm standing in my dining room looking out the picture window at the glorious sunset that New England autumns give us. I'm looking at the sunset and it's as if the leaves have captured the colors and tossed them back in the sky. Now, the turning of the leaves aren't quite as glorious this year. The drought of the summer have kind of diminished the splendor that I long for. When I look out the window, I want to gather the color of the sunset and the leaves, and I want to wrap myself in them for warmth. I love the fall. The fall is when the air is crisp and there's that snap. The fall is when there's the mystery of the unfolding new academic year. The fall is when most of my favorite celebrations occur. My birthday, the birthday of both of my parents, the birthday of one of my 2 children, the birthdays of 3 of my 4 children, and my favorite holiday, Thanksgiving. I love the fall. But it doesn't love me. You see, as I'm looking out the window, the sunset is now receding into dusk, and the darkness is coming in. The fall is when my allergies, which most of the year it's a gentle waltz with them, but in the fall, that dance accelerates into the quick step. The fall is when the sunset disappears early and the darkness comes in. And I begin to feel sad, not due to any illness or injury or loss. I'm just sad because I have seasonal affective disorder. And when the darkness comes in, no matter how I try to push back this feeling of what the French might call ennui, malaise, a physical and mental and emotional disinterest in everything. When that comes, no matter how I try not to give it space in my head, it comes. So this evening, looking out the window, I retire to my kitchen to fix a dinner. I bring the dinner up to my room. It's my sewing room, my family room, my guest room with necessary. And I bring the dinner up because tonight is one of the few nights that I'm going to watch television. And so my room, my family room, has the same great big picture window that my dining room has. And when I walk in, the darkness has already come in. Now, I don't hate the dark. What gets me is that this darkness robs the sunlight and the warmth just way too early. The light and the warmth that my body and my spirit need. Well, I go towards the television and I grab the remote. I snap the remote and I turn to fluff up the love seat where I'm going to spend the next few hours. I set my dinner tray and my dinner, and I'm going to enjoy this evening of television watching. The darkness will be behind the television, but I'll be captivated by what's on the screen. As I turn to fluff the pillow, the television boots up and I hear it. I hear it. I wish I could imitate the sound for you, but I can't. The best I can tell you is it sounds like a hurricane coming. It's a mighty roar of sound. And as I hear that sound, I then hear this sound like, I don't know, it's like maybe hard plastic against hard plastic or steel against steel. And as I hear that sound, this ennui, this sad, it begins to dissipate just a little bit. And then underneath that sound, I hear another sound. And this sound is a mighty roar. It sounds like a human roar. And it's a roar of cheers and boos and chants. And it's the roar I hear of people cheering on the physical specimens of 200 and 300-pound perfectly fit athletes chasing the pigskin. It's Monday Night Football. I sit in the chair, and as I watch these men clamor for that ball, I can feel this ennui. There is no boredom for me now. I am fully in. I sit down and I watch. Okay, no, I don't watch. I coach Patrick Mahomes with his quirky sidearm touchdown passes, and as they run down the field, I turn because my guest has come to sit beside me stealthily. I turn and smile at him, and he says, Dee, do you remember how I tricked you into watching football? Of course I remember, Dad. You called me in during halftime to watch the majorettes. And I came. I was eager to come because at that time, baton twirling was one of my career goals. After the halftime, as I was making my escape back to my room, you stopped me with, stay a minute, Dee, stay a minute. There's something I want you to see. Well, I had no interest in staying. Football was boring. But I thought, it could be worse. He could be asking me to watch golf. So I stayed. And as I sat down, he said, now, Dee, I want you to watch this brother right here. Now this brother, you like dance, right? This brother, I'm telling you, he releves, he jetés, he pirouettes. You're surprised your daddy knows those words, right? He winks, I'm not surprised. And I watch, and he was right. This guy, he releves, he jetés, he pirouettes, he scores touchdown. I'm kind of into this. And then my dad turns to me and gives me what at 14, I am sure is the best and most advice I will need for the rest of my life. He says, now Dee, you started going to those football victory parties, right? Yes. And what do the fellas like to talk about at those parties? Football, right. So here, I'm gonna give you a little something. Now this guy right here, this brother we're watching, his name is Jim Brown. The team he plays for, Cleveland Browns. The owner, Paul Brown. 3 Browns, that's all you have to remember. And you'll sound like you know what you're talking about. You will be the belle of the ball. Oh, my dad was such a gift. Somehow, little by little, he yoked me in to this game. But then we made a deal. I said, Daddy, I will watch pro football with you, not college, if you will watch figure skating with me. And we struck that deal. We spent many a weekend sitting in his den, shelling peanuts, me learning about football, and he seemed to catch on to figure skating even faster than I did. He knew a triple salchow from a triple axel, and I didn't. I just knew they were up in the air and went around fast. We had many a pleasant time sitting, enjoying the figure skating and the football. And I sat there this night, even though my dad had been on the other side of the goalposts for more than 30 years now. On those evenings, those Sundays, Monday nights, and Thursday nights when I'm getting my fix, on those nights, often, I'm never quite sure when he's going to come, but when he comes, he comforts me, and with his presence and his gift of unconditional love, he chases away the sad, the ennui, the malaise, the disinterest, at least for the length of the broadcast and the visit. Now I know that sad isn't so easily chased away. I have many days that it doesn't leave at all. But on those days when my dad is with me, I feel fully alive, the opposite of sad. I feel like a touchdown. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that beautiful story. And now I know why you care about football so much. If there is football happening, she has to think really hard. There's a game, I don't think I'm gonna make it. And now we know why. See, the story is the reason why people do what they do. That is the conclusion of our program. I thank you all so much for coming and for being here. I want to thank our storytellers, Amy, let's go, Amy, Jezrie, Wendy, Michelle, and Denise. And to all of you. So, if you want to stay connected to our storytelling, magically, you can scan this QR code and you will be on a newsletter list. I'll only send for storytelling events. That's it. Ones that are happening in Connecticut, ones maybe that I'm performing in that you might want to come in. And that's all you'll get from there in events in Connecticut. Our next gathering is going to be April 19th. It's an open mic, which means you can come. If you think, I could tell a story, you can come right on to in the back, I forget the room, we're in there all the time, in the back in the, what is it? It's a little gallery. Sheffer. The Sheffer room, and come and thank you so much. And tell a story. You don't have to have experience, you can just have a story in your heart. The theme is fresh, so fresh perspectives, fresh flowers, however that is, and that works for you. And there's a lot of times that people will come and they're like, no, I'm not gonna tell a story. But then as it goes on, you think, I do have something. And this is a great opportunity for you to start testing telling stories because it's fun and we get to know you and it's a welcoming audience. Thank you again for coming, and I hope to see you April 19th in the Sheffer room, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you so much.